everyone, and welcome to the inaugural episode of Spectrum of Color. It's the podcast that celebrates the vibrant lives of individuals with autism and the families who support them. I'm your host, Janet Jones Jordan, and the goal of this podcast is to explore stories, share experiences, and provide culturally competent resources for you and your family. In today's episode, we are joined by an incredible mother of a son with an autism diagnosis. Her unwavering advocacy and support for her son and family are truly inspiring. I'm grateful for the opportunity to connect with her as we immediately recognize our shared vision for our sons and in providing support within our own communities. As you can tell, I am as excited about this conversation as you are. Our guest today, Miss Donice Boatwright, wears many hats. She's not just a mom and a wife, but she's also a dedicated member of the esteemed sorority Sigma Gamma Rho, among many other roles that she may be free to share on today. So Donice, why don't we just jump right in? And I would like to start by having you introduce yourself and by asking you to share your personal journey to an autism diagnosis for your son, Gavin.
Hi, Janet. First of all, thank you so much for having me here today. My son Gavin, he was first diagnosed with autism back on August 1st, 2019. It's always interesting to me that I can keep track of the date like that. But I always had an idea that there was something going on. I don't like to say wrong because their way is just different than from anyone else. But I just had a feeling because there were all these, the markers that they say about this could be a sign that your child has autism. I kept seeing all those things. And looking back, the discouraging part of it was that his doctor, I'm explaining all of this to her, and she's like, no, he's just smart. And in hindsight is one of those comments that's like, well, it doesn't mean that he's not smart either way. It's just there's still something that is amiss here. But it's been, I guess, 4 years now, and he's thrived so much more. He's amazing. No one will ever take that away from me. He talks a lot more. He's still considered nonverbal, but he doesn't speak, I guess for a best term would be on command, unless he's just in the mood that day. But he has excelled so much. He started school in August of last year, so he began first grade. He excelled so much, but I'll tell you what made the biggest difference was having an awesome support system outside of mom and dad. To have a teacher, the school, the administration, all of them were absolutely amazing with him.
And that's what it means by having a village. And I think that we all have to go through our own journey, but also having that village is so important. Now, I want you to kind of talk about, because some people may not understand what autism is, talk about some of the symptoms that you noticed in your son early on that prompted you to seek out a diagnosis.
Sure. I started to notice one thing that he would do. He would spin around in circles a lot. He would laugh and be really happy and excited, but he would just sort of look up at the sky. And at the time, I don't believe we had a ceiling fan, so it wasn't like he was looking at the fan. He would just sort of look up and just spin around in circles. He wouldn't stay with any one toy. He would just kind of jump like all over. He would flap his hands a lot, whether it was just this way or he would flap something. He was constantly flapping. He walks on his toes a lot. We're actually still addressing that now. Those were the main things, but I think he wasn't communicating as much. Not to say that he was super duper chatty, but he would still mommy, daddy, things like that. And all of that just abruptly stopped. So there just was kind of a thing of noticing that all these things that quote unquote should be happening at this point aren't happening anymore.
And I often tell parents that when you feel that there's something different going on, it's best to seek out early intervention, because that's going to be key in helping your child reach those goals and those milestones that to help just enhance their lives more and more better. And so just talk about some of the daily challenges that you currently face or have faced with Gavin.
I will say it is much more pleasant now. In the beginning, anyone who says it's not hard, I don't know what their life was like, but it was incredibly hard for us. Gavin experienced things that we had never experienced with any of our other children. And of course, it was going to be different anyway, because he was the one who actually had that autism diagnosis. But just with a child growing in general, Gavin, and it's an overshare, but I also feel like it's important for people to know that there are different things that you may go through. Gavin would put his hands in his pants and he would smear poop all over the walls. He would smear it everywhere. I'm pretty sure every once in a while he would probably eat it. But it was so unexpected. And it was just like, what are we doing? I remember actually, it was right after my mom had passed. And I remember my husband coming in the room. He didn't realize I was in there. And he just went, okay, we can do this. Because when I tell you he would smear it everywhere, it was the entire room. Wow. So we'd have to take, bowl, sponges, scrub it down, get the vacuum cleaner and everything, because it would just be everywhere. Yeah. Gavin was also a lot more violent when he was younger. I don't know what that's connected to. I've heard it's pretty common, but he also grew out of it with time. His baby sister, they are just barely 2 years apart from each other. He could not be in a room with her on his own. There were even times when he and I would be just sitting together and I'd be holding her, and then just out of the blue, he would just reach over and just grab the top of her head and just yank. And it was hurtful, of course, because when you're having kids, you want them to be able to be around each other and bond and things like that. So that was hard, but probably maybe 9 months to a year later, completely different. Wow. And I mean, now those two are absolutely inseparable. They'll be in the back screaming, but in a fun way, jumping off of things, which Lord knows we don't want them to do that. But, I think the biggest challenge now that we face more than anything, it's not even anything that is specifically him. It's more so the challenges of trying to find things for him to do in the summer. Going to, trying to have like a birthday party. You have all these events that will be out that like, we're going to have a mom and son run or a dance or things like that, but nothing is necessarily geared towards him because he's not going to be like everyone else. So that is honestly the hardest challenge. Starting school wasn't awful. And being candid, that first week and a half wasn't the best. Yeah. But I try not to even reflect on that because the rest of his school year was absolutely amazing once he was able to change schools and have that wonderful teacher, wonderful parapros. He would go for walks with the assistant principal. They would go on walks every day. He'd go put his hand out and, he's just blossomed so much. So I don't necessarily feel like there's as many things that I encounter because of him. It's everyone else who just needs to catch up.
You're absolutely right about that. And for those of you who don't know, autism spectrum disorder is characterized by challenges with social skills, behaviors, communication, even just sometimes everyday life. They need a lot of support. But then there are others, because the journey is different for everybody, who go on to, they're able to have a job and they're able to live independently. And that's ultimately what we want for our children, is to live out the best life possible. And as parents and caregivers, our goal is to ensure that they have all the resources that they need. And so when you live in an area that's not have a lot of resources, don't have a lot of resources, that's not considered a service rich area like some of the other communities around here, it makes it challenging for parents, which is one of the reasons why we started Calculated Pathways, to kind of help fill in that gap of providing services, summer camps, social programs, workshops, to help support the families in our community. So again, I am just so grateful that you're here today. Now, I want to talk about, how do you balance, because I know you work outside of your home, how do you balance personal and professional life?
I don't really know if I have a whole life. I feel like everything is kind of just wrapped into one. And I think one great thing for me, I'm incredibly organized. I'm got to put it on a calendar. It has to be written down somewhere. My family will be the first to say I'm a stickler for that calendar. Like, look at the calendar, everything's on there. I feel like a lot of it, I feel like I'm able to live still, if that makes sense. But I still feel like there's so many of the things that I do or I don't do is completely centered around, is he going to be okay? Because everyone doesn't have that village that's going to understand exactly what you need. At one point in time, Gavin actually had a sitter who was amazing, because she was also his therapist at one point in time, when he was attending Hope Ridge. When she stopped working there, she was able to keep him more, but then she moved. And, selfishly, it's like, oh my God, now who's going to keep Gavin whenever we want to do something now? Because I think family means well, but they also don't understand. There's this idea that like, oh, we'll just let him. Well, he can do it. Well, no, it doesn't work that way. Yeah. So, even if it's like, well, use your words. Again, it's still not going to be the same way for him as it would be for even our 5-year-old. She can come back and say, oh, well, I need to do this. I need to go to the bathroom. I'm hungry. I'm this, I'm that. Gavin's not going to necessarily do that. Now, like I said before, if he's in the mood to be chatty, he may very well come and, tap on the bathroom door to let you know he needs to go. At home, when he wants something out of the pantry, I'll tap on it and say, what do you want? Like, I want a doorknob. So that's when I know he wants something from out of there. But I really try to incorporate him in almost everything that I'm able to do. I think it is important to still have those moments to yourself. My husband is a strong advocate of that. I'm like, well, I got invited out to a picnic, or I got invited out to a brunch. He's like, just go. Yeah. The funny thing is, he wants it for me, but he doesn't do it for himself. So I do still manage to have a good time. And work has its stressors and everything. I think one of the biggest adjustments with that was before I was able to work from home. So that way my husband and I could kind of coordinate each other's schedule. So that has been kind of a culture shock to try to adjust that, because it was to be able to go according to his schedule, my husband's work schedule, and for Gavin's school schedule. So in the summer you have a little bit more leeway, sort of, but I feel like I veered off from what you originally said.
I was just talking about how do you balance personal and professional life, and you're sharing that, just that balance.
Yeah, because I don't think you have I don't think there's a set prototype or anything. You kind of just yes. make it work, and for me it in its own way it kind of just comes, and I make it work, because for Gavin and for my other children, I still want them all to be able to be involved in different things. So Gavin's been swimming, so I make sure that he's been doing that. He started that about 2 years ago, and that is probably one of the greatest things that I could have ever gotten him involved in, because I'm that person, when I found out about, his diagnosis, okay, what are the different things that he can do? What are things that are supposed to be good for him? And for sports, because he was at that age that, okay, this is the time for him to start, doing a class of some sort. And I saw that swimming and track were supposedly the two best things. I don't doubt it with the track, because that little boy is fast. But I'm just not there yet. But I said, well, let's try swimming, because I know how he is in the shower and in the bathtub. He will stay in there if you let him for an hour easily. He took to the water, a little merman. He took to the water so easily. You could just almost see just the joy of this is home. This is where I need to be. His instructor, Mike, oh my goodness. I remember when he started with him, and I was like, okay, he has autism, he's nonverbal, so you're going to have a little bit of a challenge. And he was never ugly or anything about it. He was like, okay. He said, I'm going to read up on it so I can get ready for it. And I appreciated that.
Yes.
It wasn't just okay, because no, it's not okay. There's still some things that you have to do. So as small of a gesture as that was, it meant a lot to me that he just said, okay, I'm going to look up these different things and see what's supposed to work. What are different approaches that I may need to take. And I tell you, Gavin, he may not be able to tell him, but Gavin loves him.
Yes.
I mean, he has him swimming in 7 feet. Actually, just as recently as last week or so, we finally got him, Mike finally got him to swim under the water, because we've been trying to get him to do that, because Gavin would kind of like dog paddle and, but wouldn't get tired. So it's like, okay, well, good, because at least we know that you'll be safe. But I am also thinking ahead and saying, he may be able to compete with this one day, and because he's really good at it and he's comfortable with it. So just taking those little baby steps to get him a little bit further with that. So have him doing that. I haven't quite figured out anything else for him to do yet. I was trying to figure out a couple of things for him to try in the summer, but then I also don't want him to be overstimulated, because it's not like with the other kids, I can put them in 3-4 things and they're like, okay, I'm fine. Honestly, Gavin is, if you can take him outside and let him just feel the sunshine and walk around and run around and just be free, he's a happy kid.
And that's sometimes just what they need, just having a place to go with. And we talked about just inclusivity and making sure that the resources, the support systems are inclusive of our children, because they don't always get a lot of opportunities that other, neurotypical children get. And so sometimes as parents, we have to create those opportunities for them. And when you talk about swimming, for those of you who don't know, swimming is the number one cause of death among autistics, simply because a lot of them are just drawn to water. I don't know if it's just the calmness of the water, not sure, but for those of you who can get your son into, or a daughter or a child into a swim program, please do so. Just this morning I was reading a story about the kid, the 4-year-old that they just found in a creek in Minnesota, who tragically wandered away from his home. And again, as you talk about Gavin running and just kind of maybe having elopement syndrome, which a lot of people with autism do have, they do elope. And so sometimes they end up in areas that are unsafe for them. And so this young, beautiful child actually wandered away from his home and was tragically found in a creek this morning. And our condolences go out to his family. And we're just so saddened to hear that story. But again, I am so grateful that you shared the story about Mike, because ironically, my son will be starting swim lessons with Mike on today as well. So we're really, really excited about that. So I know you were talking about family, and we were talking about our villages. And we know family means well. They always do. They mean well. But I think it's also important for people to recognize is you have to educate your families, because they're not with you every day. They don't see Gavin every day. They don't see the things that you recently talked about. They don't see that. You may explain it to them, but it's not their lived experience. And so I think as much education that you can get, it's also important that we know to share that information with our families, because if in order to have the support system that we truly need, people need to understand, and they need to have a level of understanding so that they can best support the child. And it helps us because then we can focus on self-care, which is often neglected. For any parent of a child with special needs, it's often neglected because we put everything we possibly can into our children and our loved ones to ensure that they have everything that they need, while we are neglecting ourselves, our bodies, our mental health. All of those things play a role, because if we're not, and I know you've heard it before, that if I'm not my best self, I can't give my best self to those that I'm caring for. So I just want to encourage you to continue to sharing your story with your families. And I'm so grateful again that you're here with us on today. Now I want to jump right into talking about education and social skills. And I know you talked about some of the challenges that Gavin has had and his successes. Are there any therapies that he's currently in, because we know that therapies can be very, very helpful and will really help the child to reach those goals. And so what type of therapies have Gavin been involved in?
Sure. While he was in school, he actually had occupational therapy and speech therapy. Prior to starting the school system, he did ABA therapy. Once he started school, ABA therapy kind of just went away because it's more centered around if you're specifically at an autism therapy center, or if you seek those additional services out, because you can get those in the home as well also. And also outside of school, he was supposed to start doing physical therapy. That's a story for another day.
Okay.
But he'll be starting that as well for the toe walking, which is what I was talking about earlier. Because the thing is with toe walking too that no one tells you about is that can eventually lead to a much bigger problem. Because right now, so if Gavin's like this, if you go to press, you can't push his foot back. It's just like, no, I'm going to sit right here.
Right.
So what the plan is for him is to not walk on his toes so much, but then my husband and I have also pretty much accepted that he's probably going to wind up having to get like casted, which will just be like not quite a full body cast, but pretty much from the top of the thigh on down. He won't be able to take a bath or shower or anything for about 6 to 8 weeks whenever we do that. But we also want to go through as much as we can without having to go through surgery, because that's, if it's absolutely mandatory, it's going to stop something, then okay, but I'd rather try everything else first.
Absolutely.
But the speech therapy, of course, again, like I said, he's still considered nonverbal, but he does talk a whole lot more. We actually found out this year for certain that Gavin can actually read, which I kind of knew it the whole time, but because Gavin is like, you try to get him to say something back, he'll just kind of just look at you like, no, I don't feel like saying it. But when he had some testing done, we actually confirmed that he can read, and that was like a super proud moment. So again, with the speech therapy, just trying to just pull that out of him a little bit more, and whatever they were doing prior to him finishing school, it is working. I mean, because even at home now, he'll randomly just start saying something like, yesterday he was eating some French fries. He's like, this is delicious, and I was, I kind of turned around and said, what did you say? He's like, delicious. And, he's been blowing kisses now. So we'll say, give a kiss. He goes, mwah, mwah. So,
Aww.
And he'll put his hand up and everything. So he's just been a lot more vocal. I absolutely, since we're not in school now, I credit them, of course, but then I also look at like his siblings, because he has his baby sister that's at home, that she's not a baby, but his little sister that's at home, and then his 15-year-old sister that's also at home. They have their own little like get along gang that they have their little fun and talk and laugh and joke. And I think also just the interaction of hearing the different words that each other says. The 5-year-old, I tell you, outside of me and Dad, like that is by far Gavin's biggest cheerleader.
Aww.
She's like, okay, Gavin, you can do it. She's like, say this, and most of the time Gavin is looking at her like, if you don't leave me alone. But but there's so much love for her. You can tell he wants to make her happy too. So then he'll kind of blurt a word out here and there. The occupational therapy is more so to get him more accustomed to, it's funny that's called occupational therapy, but it's more like the things that are going on around you. Whereas for me, occupation, I think of job, but it's all the things that are going on around you. So even being able to pick up a fork and eat, like Gavin has never been able to use a fork and spoon. Let me rephrase that differently. I don't know if he can't use it. I think it's more so he doesn't want to use it, because he's very big on textures, which of course, is very common for folks with autism as well, because if it doesn't feel right, I'm not touching it. So like applesauce, he has never had it. He'll look at it or poke it, and that's about it. He wants to be able to pick it up and eat it. It has to have some sort of crispness to it. Even stuff that's like a bread. He used to love honey buns. I think he still likes them a lot, but now he's got a little bougie about it. It's like, it's the stickiness on my fingers. So he's he holds it with the plastic, and I'm like, well, where did this come from? But yeah, he has that also. Then, like I said, the physical therapy is more so for the toe walking and everything, and trying to get him through all of that. I think all the therapies do some sort of good for him. I don't feel like, I know everyone has their opinions about everything, but to me, there's no pointless therapy that he has. Everything has, you may not see everything as immediate as you feel like you would want it to be, but there's nothing that's just I don't see the point of this. Everything has a purpose, and I can honestly say at some point I always see something with it.
Absolutely.
And I'm just I just think that they're all good to have.
Therapy is very beneficial for children, not just those who are on the spectrum, but even just in everyday life. Having the therapies to help you navigate even walking on steps or going up and down steps, or like you said, my son struggled a lot with even turning on and off the light switch. Some things that we take for granted that are very simple to us can be challenging for those who have varying needs. So we just want to make sure that if your child is in need of therapy of any sort, go ahead and seek out those therapies. If there is an issue with insurance, reach out to Calculated Pathways. We can help you find resources that are available to help you cover those expenses for your child. So it's very, very important to help with their progression and to help them just kind of navigate life and make things easier for them. And I heard you talk a little bit about the school system, and just talk about how has some of the educational support systems been helpful for Gavin. I know that he just started school, so just kind of share a little bit about that.
I will just put out a small disclaimer with that for anyone who's getting ready to embark on that. Just be prepared, because it's not the same for kids with special needs as it is for kids that don't have any special needs. That was the one thing for me. It helped me because I'm such an early bird. I'm such a planner, and I'm going to do this as soon as possible. That helped me a lot with getting him ready, because what I didn't know is that, I'm not sure if it's like this in every county, but I know specifically for Douglas County, the special education folks are on contract. So when the summertime comes around, they're not there. So when you're just now starting to get in there, there is no one for you to necessarily go through everything with in advance. So I, thankfully, again, because I keep everything also, I have a digital copy of everything, I was able to contact the program for exceptional children. I got in touch with 2 different people in that office. So I sent them Gavin's, his IEP. I'm sorry, not his IEP, because we were trying to get the IEP. But all of his testing, his psych eval, his autism evaluation, everything. His speech therapies from when he was at Hope Bridge, his occupational therapies while he was at Hope Bridge. I sent them copies of all of that, so they had at least something to go off of for this child that was coming there. Because the thing is, if you don't have that, they know nothing. So you'll start out, that first day of school, and they're trying to figure it all out. And it's totally not their fault, because, I mean, what are you supposed to do? But just for you as a parent, I just wish that was something I would have known in advance. But that's why when I come across people now that are going through that, I'm like, hey, just go ahead and get ready. Whatever you have, just try to send it in advance, because it's going to help you.
Yes.
But once we got in there and got everything settled, they made sure everything was taken care of. So we finally got his IEP done, because one thing for Gavin, he actually had an IEP previously when he was with the LEAP program. And LEAP program, of course, you start when you turn 3. The unfortunate part was COVID happened. So Gavin started the LEAP program. He was in the LEAP program from January 27, 2020 to whatever day that was in March in 2020 when they finally said shut it down. So he had the IEP from then. So he still had one on file, but of course it was long since, expired. But we were able to go ahead and get in and get it all done, got all his testing done. And they absolutely made sure that he got everything he needed. And the thing that I liked is that I was able to advocate for him. And that's another thing. Advocate advocate. Do not accept everything just as the gospel. Yeah. And to pivot with that too, I don't think people necessarily mean wrong or, want to take things from you, but you also have to fight for a lot more. Because for me, my biggest thing for him, coming from Hope Bridge, he always had one AM therapist, one PM therapist. Going to school, you don't have that anymore. Now it's you with some other kids. It's still a small classroom, of course, but it's not the same as having this one-on-one. So for me, I felt like he's not performing the same way that you are all expecting him to, because he doesn't have these same groups. He doesn't have the one and the one. So I was pushing for one-on-one therapy. The person with the PEC office that I truly appreciated, she actually broke it down for me. It wasn't just like, well, no, that's just not what we're doing. And that can be very disheartening for you, because you hear that so much with your kids. It's like, well, no, we're not, or that's not what we're going to do. So it actually meant a lot for her to actually sit there and break it down. She said, no, it's not us just saying that, no, definitely no. There's just these other steps that we have to go through first. And here are those other steps. And I told her, I said, you have no idea what that means. And she said, I may not be in your spot, but I get it. I would want someone to do that for me too. And I said, because I'm so used to people just saying no, but not telling me why, so I give her all the kudos in the world. But getting everything taken care of, she made sure that Gavin was taken care of. She made sure when he had to change schools that he was placed in a great spot. And I mean, I couldn't be any more grateful for that village. I'm a little bummed because we have to start all over, because they decided now what they had been doing was the levels. So they had 1, 2, 3, and then they basically move you into like the general population. With that though, you had kids that were kind of all over the place. So the school that Gavin was zoned to, Douglasville is a lot bigger than I realized, probably a couple years ago. The school that Gavin was zoned to was probably 25 minutes away from us. And that's with, no traffic at all whatsoever. And so his school bus was coming at 5:45 in the morning.
Oh my gosh.
And then he still wouldn't get to school until about 7 o'clock. So he was on the bus over an hour, crack of dawn, and then coming back, he would get out of school at 1:20. He still wouldn't get back home until almost 3 o'clock. So some conversations were had, and they finally decided, you know what, this probably isn't the best thing for us to do. So now they placed all the kids at their closest home school. So now Gavin's school is going to be 4 minutes away driving.
Wonderful.
So I'm happy, but it's also bittersweet because the school is so much bigger than the school he came to, the school he's coming from. The school he came from, I don't even think it was 300 kids there.
Wow.
So, but at the same time, I also feel like that's part of us in general growing. Like, you have to go through these different changes. There's going to be a couple of, uncomfortable parts and things like that. And even though as a parent, you're like, oh my God, how is he going to react? I have to hold him close. I still have to let him venture out. I also have to trust that he's going to be okay too. And if he's not, oh, mama's going to be there to fix it.
Absolutely.
So
Yes, we will. Yes, we will. We're mama bears all day.
all the time.
and again, the journey is very different for each and every child. But it's also important for parents to understand what IDEA is. They understand what a free and appropriate education is. Understand what the laws are in your school, and when you go and sit for your child's IEP meeting and they give you that information sheet, please don't just toss it to the side. Read it, study up on it, find out as much as you can, and try your best to be a partner with your educational system, because these are the people who are there with your children, engaging with them each and every day. And so it's important to have those solid relationships. And not every relationship is going to be the same. And if that person that you are engaging with is that you feel may not be as helpful, then reach out to someone else in the education system or part of that team that will understand and listen to you. But more importantly, it's about forming those partnerships and relationships. And as you prepare for your child who may be getting ready to start school or is in school just even year in and year out, what helped me was to put together a care coordination binder where I kept all of his information in there. One section was IEPs, one section was his doctors and his therapists, and just keeping all of that information with you. And I carried it with me. I kept it in my car and I carried it with me everywhere that I went, so that if someone needed it, well, now everything is electronic. So you can just keep that information with you, so that when it's, they ask for it, it's readily available and you won't have to spend so much time searching for that information. So those are just some helpful hints I just wanted to just kind of throw out there. So Donice, I just want to share or even ask this question. How has the community as a whole, whether it's your faith community, whether it's your county, whether it's your family, how have they responded to Gavin's needs?
In being fully transparent, I don't think everything is as good as it can be. Just like I was sharing earlier, when they have like the mom and me things, or, parents night out and things like that, none of that is inclusive of the special needs community. And I'm not going to fully blame them, of course, because you still have to have staffing to do it too, right? You can't just have Sally from down the street do it. So it does need to be the right people. But then I also feel like, but let's start making those efforts so that, this group is included, because, I'm not going to be dramatic and say like I go in a corner and cry, but it does let you down a little bit to feel like, well, I'd love to be able to take my child to this. Like I was just thinking the other day, for example, I'm going to take my two girls to a dream game. I would love to take my son to a women's basketball game. I'd love to take him to just a game in general. I don't know how he's going to respond. And as excited and as happy as you are to take some of your kids, there is a part of me that, breaks a little bit, because I'm like, well, I can't take him, or I can, but I'm probably going to be running around with him the whole time. So I just wish that more people, and everything shouldn't be a money grab necessarily, but just think about how much you could be doing. So I with that, I do wish these communities, companies, agencies, whatever, I do wish that they did a lot more, and not just in snippets, not just in, Autism Awareness Month. Do it all the time.
Absolutely.
Even if you had something that's like once a month, just have something, because people like me, people like you, there's lots of people out here who would really appreciate having something to be thought of, because that's one thing I always feel like, is that they're not thought of. They are absolutely an afterthought.
An afterthought, yes.
And they're still people.
Yes.
It shouldn't, and to me, and I use this very loosely, but with the popularity that autism has gained, with, people having their own, I'm trying not to go that route, but we'll just leave it at the popularity that it's gained.
Yes.
It should be more out there at this point. You know what I mean? Like there should be more things that are coming up. So it's like with everyone, like autism, why are we still struggling to find everything? Like even with a doctor, why can I not find a doctor that specializes in autism without having to pay $800 to go see you? I feel like that needs to help. When you look, needs not help, but that needs to improve greatly. And my hope, I know I have plans for things that I like to do. I know there are things that you're doing, but we can't do it by ourselves.
Absolutely.
And everything also takes money. It takes funding. It takes all kind of different things. So my hope is that within the next year or two, that I would see a big change. With family, again, like we were saying before, I think that they mean well, but you also have to be willing to listen, because as a parent, it gets exhausting, to keep trying to explain something, and then you've just made up your mind. And I know our parents, grandparents or stuff are all from like a different generation, but at the same time, times have changed. Like, and if you didn't go through it, I need you to humble yourself and listen to what I'm saying, and offer some sort of help. I know I've experienced a couple times where Gavin was having like a full meltdown, and I don't know if he'll watch it, but if he does, so be it. My dad just like sat there. There was no, can I help? And, and that was something I was complaining to my husband about with it. I said, I understand that people don't necessarily know what to say or do. I said, but what happened to the pleasantry or the manners of like, is there something I can do? Can I help? Most likely I'll tell you no, but, offer. It's like he's sitting there, kicking, screaming. And I'm used to it. I've come to a place where I can get calm and I'll just zen as much as I can in that moment and just say, it's okay, Gavin, just calm down. It's fine. But you're seeing all this and you're just like, that's not helpful, because I don't need an extra body here if you're not going to be helpful. So with that, and even when we talk about things, like with my husband's family. And I think sometimes they don't think about it, but it's like when you're saying things like, we'll use your words or do this, or, or he can go to the bathroom. It's like, but you're not here.
Right.
So as much as that sounds like, oh, he can,
Yes.
and let's be honest, I'm sure he can.
And one day he may be able to.
Yeah, but it's also, there's other kids in the house.
Uh-huh.
There's me. There's we're all trying to do a bunch
Yes.
of things at the same time. We cannot always just stop every
Right.
single moment. Like, are there times I wish I could? Absolutely.
Right.
I wish I could do everything under the sun to just like be able to teach him and train him. But I'm also not, I'm just his mother. I'm not a trained therapist, So it's like when you say things like that, it also comes off as a slap in the face to us too,
It's
because
hurtful.
it's like we're going through our own
Yes.
struggles.
Yes.
And don't get me wrong, I'll take my child any day. I would not change it. Is it hard sometimes? Absolutely. But I still wouldn't change it for the world. But I also don't need you, who's never dealt with this at all whatsoever, to demean me or undermine anything that I'm doing. And I think that's one thing that a lot of people miss. It's like you think you're being helpful, but not so much.
No. It's like, that's okay.
Yeah, because it's like people say things. And like I
Yes.
said, I do think in my heart of hearts, I do think people say things because they think I'm being helpful, but you're not going through it. It's just like, I know for me, one thing I hate is when people are like, I'm so busy. I'm so busy. Are you? And not to say that everyone isn't busy.
Right.
I get that. But you're busy and my busy are
It's
two
two different
completely different
And
things.
right. And it doesn't negate their business.
Absolutely.
It's just different.
Yeah.
And our level of busyness as moms or parents or caregivers of children with special needs or disabilities or varying abilities is very different
Yes.
than someone else's. And, we go back to that journey. As a certified diversity practitioner, it's important for me to educate businesses, faith-based organizations, anybody who would listen about the importance of inclusivity and including our children in activities. And, I keep going back to calculated pathways. We're very new, but there are some amazing things on the horizon that we are now in preparation of providing for this very community that is considered a low resource community. So we want to include Gavin. We want to be able to include those, but it's also important that we have the funding to be able to do that. And the funding will help to ensure that we have qualified individuals helping to support these programs. Because I can't just go and get my neighbor down the street and say, hey,
Absolutely.
yes, you can come and volunteer. But when it comes to really supporting these children the way that they need to be supported, you have to have qualified people who are trained. There are certain things I know, certain things I don't know, and I dare not step into an area that I don't know much about and then endanger someone else's child.
Absolutely.
And that's what we don't want to do. And so what I've also found is that the reason that a lot of businesses, the reason that a lot of families, they don't do what we want or think that they should be doing is because a lot of them don't know that they need to. And so then it becomes about educating. It becomes about helping. You talked about just your son having a meltdown and your dad sitting there looking. I remember taking Jeremiah to get a haircut one day, and he just, the buzzers, things that people take for granted, and listen to this barber say, oh, well, why are you squirming in a chair like you a little girl? Just stop it. And I had to cut him off. But I immediately went to my car after I corrected him and explained to him why this was happening. I just needed to get a haircut because we were going out of town and we couldn't get to his regular barber. I just needed you to cut his hair. I don't need your comments, your negative comments. And after I explained to him in as nice as I could possibly be, I went to the car and I just cried because it's hurtful. And so we want to make sure that the support that you're giving to your family members, that is legitimate, that is authentic. And if you don't know what to do, just say, I don't know how to help you. How can I help you? Ask, because I'll tell you. I remember a lady, the child was having a meltdown in the store, and people were just looking, and I could hear all the negative comments. People saying, oh, he's just bad. She just needs to whoop his butt, and all this. And every time I hear that, I cringe, because you never know what people are going through. And I just walked up to her. I didn't know her. I just walked up to her and say, you need some help? She took her purse and she was handing me all kind of stuff, because she needed help with her child, but didn't know how to ask. And I'm sure she probably felt embarrassed, because I've been there too. And so it's important that we educate the community. We're so busy trying to educate our children how to fit in. Why not we do more educating of the community how to accept
Absolutely.
and include our children and our loved ones as well, and even adults with autism that struggle. So we just want to make sure that we have a more inclusive world where everybody will feel accepted, that they will feel like they're important, that they will feel like I'm included, and that it's not just about you, but it's about us too. So yes, those things are very, very important.
It is. I mean, because even when you were talking about when you go out somewhere, I mean, I know I tune it out now, but I feel like the last couple of times I've gone out where Gavin may have had a meltdown, what I appreciated, I don't know if that's actually what was happening, but that's what it felt like to me, is that people just kept to themselves. Yeah. They pretty much took the attitude of, this has nothing to do with me. It's not bothering me. I'm just going to stay, Now, granted, it would have been nice if someone had been like, hey, do you need some help with something? But at the same time, I know that's not really the day and age that we're in anymore. Right. But even just staying to yourself, that was helpful, as opposed to, like you said, those stares or the comments, because we don't need that. No. We don't need that. And, it just, a lot of us are dealing with enough. A lot of us are dealing with things that you don't see. One thing that I say about, for me personally, Gavin was diagnosed August 2019. I lost my mom February 2020.
So sorry.
Thank you. It was 6 months. So it's like, and one thing that people talk about is like, there's a grief process you go through with your child's diagnosis as well. And it's not because of they're gone, but you're grieving the ideas of what you thought their life was going to be like. And the first time I heard that, I was like, okay. Yeah. Because when I first just heard grief, I'm like, what do you mean? But then when it was broken down that way, and I said, now I get it. So you're grieving this idea. You're grieving, like my husband and I, there's 4 girls. Gavin's the only boy. So my idea was like, oh, he'll get to teach him how to shave, and they can go play ball together, and he can teach him all the sports, and they'll have this whole thing. And that's not to say that those things may not happen, but it's not happening right now. Right. And even sometimes my husband doesn't necessarily express his feelings as much as I wish that he would, but I get it. I'm not a man. So, but he has friends who, our kids are the same age as Gavin. And, they'll talk about, I'm taking my son to a softball game, and, he's doing the football game. And he said, it hurts sometimes. And I said, I just wish you would share that with me, because we're still on this journey together. Yes. I'm a lot more open about my feelings, but it's like just this idea. So it's like you had that grief process of like, and then all the unknowns. Yes. Because it's like, well, what do I do? And then, you start Googling stuff and seeing how much at that time that it costs for a family, for a child with autism, just for their therapies and services alone. It was over $100,000, and that was just for your child. That's not anything else going on in life. So you're grieving, this idea. And then I had the actual grief. And then there's, life. There's just all these things and
all these variables.
Yeah. So it's like, you don't know what someone's dealing with.
Right.
Like, you know, I'm quick to smile, you know, but that doesn't mean I'm not dealing with all these other, I don't want to say demons, but I guess for lack of a better word, all these other things that are going through your head and all these other feelings and emotions. And, you know,
and for those listening, no, she's not calling her child or anyone else a demon.
Not at all. Yeah, just to clarify. But yeah, just all these thoughts that you have. So it's like when you have people that, whether it's family, whether it's strangers, that just feel like, I just got to say something.
Yes.
It's like, but do you?
Yeah.
You know, maybe if it's not helpful, you know, and I do get it. I do get that you may not know how to help. But let's try to figure it out. You know, let's sit down and let's have a conversation. You know, like, I don't know what to do. Like, I remember my mom, when we found out about Gavin, one thing that sticks with me a lot is she's like, I don't know anything about autism. I don't know it, but I want to learn.
Yes.
All this time, that still means the world to me, because she's the only person that said that.
Yeah.
There was no one else in the family that expressed that. And, you know, again, it just goes back to, you don't know what the smallest gesture means to someone, you know, because I don't have it all figured out. I'm still learning as I go. I get frustrated along the way. Like I said, when there's things like, well, goodness, I want him to be able to do this, or, you know, flying, you know, taking a flight. I don't know if he can get on a plane because the ears popping. Oh my gosh. Like, you know, what is that going to be like? And you're in close, there's just all these things. And you just don't know what anything's going to be like. I just had someone the other day that was just like, yeah, I'm about to be an empty nester. And, you know, and I was just listening and, you know, and I guess I made a face, but not like a mean face or anything. And she said, what's wrong? And I said, I don't know if I'll be an empty nester. And I said, it's a nice idea, but I don't know. And I was talking about Gavin at that point. She was like, I never thought about that. Right. And she was like, I'm sorry. I said, no. Yeah. That's your life. I said, it just, you know, that's not something I thought about. But when you said it, I guess, you know, my face was like, I don't know what that's going to look like for us. Now, you ask me any day of the week, I absolutely think Gavin's going to thrive and be amazing. Like, I remember making a comment a while ago, like him and Journey are going to be like the same school or right next door to each other, or something where they're not that far, because I think that their bond is just the most beautiful thing in the world to me. But, you know, I don't know. Yeah.
And we take it day by day, and that's what we should do. And take every day and absorb all the good things every single day as much as we can. Hold on to those golden moments.
Yes.
Because they'll be gone in a flash. And I often say children with autism become adults with autism, and they become adults really, really quickly, because I'm looking at my son who just turned 15, and we know that he won't have a college journey like my other 3 children did. But at the end of the day, we want to make sure that he has the best life possible, that he has everything. We'll introduce him to stuff, even not knowing whether or not he can do it, but just the introduction of something, because you don't know. And these kids are resilient. They're brilliant. Yes. They are amazing, and they're ours. And we will treasure them, and we will love on them, and we will help show the world who they are, and how much that they can give back. And I think that that's what's important. And so I just want you to know that even listening to some of the things that you've shared with us on today, you know, I know for a fact that there are some resources that's right off the top of my head that just started popping up every time you were talking about certain things that I want to help introduce you to. And also, just for those of you who are listening, if you need help, if you need resources, just reach out to us. We have, you know, and I've been blessed over the last 15 years of this journey, being able to connect with so many different organizations and people who can help us make life just a little bit easier, make that journey just a little bit easier. So we're here, and you know, this has been such an amazing conversation.
It has.
You know, with you today. But before we go, one last thing I want you to share is just if there's any advice, tip, anything that has helped you that could help another parent who may be just starting, because the things that you've shared has been, again, very inspiring, as I knew that it would be. And I just want you to share something encouraging to any family that's out there on today.
I think the biggest thing that I would say is it's an uphill battle, but enjoy each and every step that you're climbing. There's going to be some days that feel really hard, but I guarantee you there's going to be something in between each and every day that is absolutely beautiful. Because on my hardest days, I swear, Gavin can smile or giggle, and even if it's just for a moment, it melts away whatever else I was feeling. I think that would be my biggest piece, my little nuggets in between there. Don't be afraid to speak up, because nobody's out. No one else is going to do it for you. But more importantly, no one else is going to do it like you. No one else is going to advocate for your child the way that you would advocate for your child. But don't give up. Don't be discouraged. Cry when you need to cry. I cry a lot. Cry when you need to cry. Take those moments when you need to take those moments. But embrace the journey. You may never know why you were placed on this journey, but embrace it, because it's yours, and every single thing that they do is going to be that much more meaningful to you.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Wow. Well, thank you so much. I'm certain that you've inspired our audience on today, and we thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Joe, I need you to...